Distinguished friends, it gives me great pleasure to welcome all of you on behalf of the Center for Cultural Resources and Training, Ministry of Culture, Government of India, for this interactive discussion on the theme of religious pluralism and the impact of religious communities in the light of globalization that is sweeping the face of the earth. The conceptual framework for our discussion today is going to be in three parts. The first part will be a brief introduction about each of the religious systems as you have understood it. You are representing your particular religious community. The second part will be how our religious community has developed and contributed to religious pluralism in our country. And the third part of our discussions would be to look at the impact of globalization on the religious communities in our country as well as the world at large, and particularly the challenges facing the younger generation. So I'm delighted that this program of the Center for Cultural Resources and Training for their Teachers Online Educational Program has brought us together. I have with me these distinguished scholars: Dr. S.C. Goswami, retired professor of chemistry, Delhi University, who is a scholar of Hinduism. We have the ex-Vice Chancellor of Jamia Millia Islamia, the Central University, Mr. Syed Shahid Mahdi, and member of the Governing Board of the Indian Council for Cultural Relations. We have Professor Amrit Kaur Basra, who is currently the Deputy Dean, Foreign Students, Fellow History and Academic Society, Institute of Lifelong Learning, and Associate Professor in Delhi College of Arts and Commerce, University of Delhi. We have Rabbi Priest of the Jewish community of Delhi, Rabbi Ezekiel Isaac Malekar, who is the priest and honorary secretary of the Judaheim Synagogue of Delhi. He's also been the registrar of the human rights activist and scholar of Judaism. We have Father Dr. M.D. Thomas, director of Institute of Harmony Studies, New Delhi. He was also the former national director of Commission for Religious Harmony, CVCI, New Delhi, and he's a scholar of Christianity. And I am moderating this program as well as representing the Baha'i community of India as its national trustee. We have the famous Lotus Temple, which most people are familiar with, and also serve as the General Secretary of the Temple of Understanding, an interfaith NGO represented at the United Nations. So I would like to request our scholars who are present here to first briefly introduce their own religious faith. So I invite Dr. Goswami to kindly address the topic of Hinduism.
Thank you, Dr. Merchant. At the outset, I would like to share an information that the word Hindu does not exist in Hinduism. You see, this word Hindu has resulted from this river Sindhu, on the eastern side of which we live, we the Indians live. Now, these people living on the eastern side of the river Sindhu, they were very rich, they were very prosperous, and they were very peaceful. So they were an easy target for these Persian invaders who came and they were confronted by this mighty river Sindhu, which they pronounced as Hindu. The Greeks pronounced it as Indos. The Britishers converted it into Indus. So we are Indians and Hindus as a result of mispronunciation of the name of the river Sindhu. Now, what was the religion that these people were following? In the sense of Hinduism, you see, religion is not prophet based. It is not scripture based. You see, unlike other religions, for example, you can't imagine Christianity without prophet Jesus or the Holy Bible. You can't think of Islam without Prophet Muhammad and the Holy Quran. But you can't say the same thing about Hinduism. So Hinduism, for Hindus, religion is oneness. The various religions are just varied forms of the religion, which is oneness, so that each one can follow his or her own path that suits him or her best. So that was the concept of these people who were living on the eastern side of the river Sindhu. And for them, you see, existence was one. So the unity of existence was the summum bonum of these people, and unity of not only all human beings but all animals, vegetation, all mineral kingdom. That unity, that is the summum bonum of Hinduism, in short.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I'd now like to invite Mr. Sayyid Shahid Mehdi Saab to tell us about Islam in brief.
Well, I am a common Muslim. I am not a sort of a scholar of Islam or a Maulana or a Mulvi. But I think that's only the right thing, because each Muslim, there is no priesthood in Islam in that sense, as in some other religions like Catholicism and so on and so forth. So I think each Muslim, anybody who calls himself Muslim, can pronounce on what are the articles of the faith. I think the most important article of faith among for the Muslims is monotheism, one God. There is no God but God. That is La ilaha illallah. And I think the second article of faith is that God has been sending prophets. Some prophets have been named. Some of them are supposed to be major prophets, like Adam, like Noah, like Moses, like Jesus. They are all recognized as major prophets of Islam, and the last prophet, Muhammad. Now, this is also an article of faith that Muhammad is the last prophet. Then I think the important feature is, if you follow 4 or 5 things, you are a Muslim. First, belief in God. Second, belief in the prophethood of Muhammad. Third is observing certain rituals, that is prayers. Prayers which are 5 times a day, from morning until late in the evening, but they could be combined also. And then a month of fasting in Ramadan. And then this is very important, which is usually not emphasized. Everybody who has some surplus income, a certain percentage of that income, which is known as zakat, has to be given for charitable purposes. You see, people try to usually remember namaz and other things, but they don't remember this part of this. And lastly, if somebody can afford, then go for Hajj to Mecca. Now, what is the significance of Hajj to Mecca? The Hajj to Mecca, the significance is that humanity, irrespective of color, irrespective of race, is equal. Because whenever you go there, you find people from China to Nigeria to other parts, Europe, other parts of the world. So I think if I have to sort of sum up, I would say, or if I have to put emphasis, belief in one God, monotheism, and the brotherhood of humanity, irrespective of caste, creed, and color. You see, these are perhaps the important features of Islam.
Thank you very much, Sayyid Mehdi Saab. I'd now like to invite Father Dr. M.D. Thomas, who represents the Christian community, particularly the Catholic Church, to kindly introduce to us what is Christianity.
Well, in the popular sense of the word, Christianity is a religion. But in a deeper sense, it's a lifestyle lived and initiated by Jesus Christ. Still deeper, it's a movement. It's a movement by which people open up to one another and consider one another as brothers and sisters, and love and serve one another, considering God as the Father of all the humanity. The basis of Christianity is the life and teachings of Jesus Christ. And the core of that is basically an ethics by which human beings interact with one another, love one another, do to the other what you wish the other do to you, forgive the other in an unconditional manner, serve the other in a humble way, and thus considering one another, brothers and sisters, especially lovingly serving the other who are weaker than us, who are on the margins, who are disadvantaged, and that becomes the core of the Christian faith.
Thank you very much, Father Thomas. I'd now like to request our rabbi, the priest from the Jewish community, Rabbi Ezekiel Malika, to tell us what is Judaism.
The fundamental principle of Judaism is its belief in oneness of God, and it has been very nicely explained in our universal prayer of Judaism, Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kebot Malkuto Leulam Vaed. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one. Blessed be his name and his glorious kingdom for ever and ever. And thou shalt love thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, and with all thy might. The Holy Scripture of Judaism, Tanakh, and one of its part is Torah. So someone asked Rabbi Hillel to explain Torah in one sentence, and Rabbi Hillel said, "What is hateful and hurtful to you, do not do to others." If you follow this, rest is the commentary. And it has also been explained in Psalm 133, Hinne mato umanayim, Sheved akim gamyakat. How beautiful and pleasant it is to see our brothers and sisters to dwell in unity. It is also said in the book of Leviticus, and thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. That is the whole essence, tenets of Judaism. God created human beings in his own image and in his own likeness. And God is compassionate, merciful, slow in anger, and abundant in love. And therefore, we must also have the same virtues. We must be compassionate, merciful, as well as slow in anger, and serve the humanity. This is the essence of Judaism.
Thanks a lot, Rabbi Malika. I'd now like to invite Dr. Amrit Kaur, who represents the Sikhism, to tell us about Sikhism, her own religious belief.
Sikhism, the youngest religion in the world, was founded by Guru Nanak in 15th century. His Bani alluded to one God, one humanity, and one universe. His basic tenets emphasized Naam Japo, Kirat Karo, Vand Chako, to recite the name of God, to earn in righteous way, and to share it with others. His followers continued with his traditions, and Sikh gurus carried out the path shown by Baba Nanak. Dasham Guru, Guru Gobind Singh Ji, ordained and proclaimed Guru Granth Sahib as Guru. So Shabad, the Bani, is there to guide the lives of everyone, which is based on compassion, forgiveness, free from homage or conceitedness. It is enshrined in the whole concept of Sangat and Pangat. Congregation of devotees bring together people to allude to one God, and Pangat, enshrined by the whole tradition of community kitchen, is based on the concept of equality and brings everyone together. It is sincerely believed and practiced by Sikhs and all those who believe in one humanity and one universe and one God, that we all live in plural religious society and we can always care and share for each other. As Baba Nanak said, Nanak kuch kahiye, kuch suniye. We must say something and we must listen to others.
Thank you very much. I'd like to now speak a little bit about the Baha'i faith. The Baha'is believe that the religion of humankind is one, it is progressive and continuous. As a system of knowledge, it has to complement the other system of knowledge called science. So based on the collaboration, cooperation, and coordination of these two systems of knowledge, the human civilization advances. The Baha'i faith was founded by Baha'u'llah, who was born in Iran, and he gave these universal teachings and said that the world today has to be looked upon as one country and all of us are its citizens. Just as in the life of the human being, we progress organically from infancy to childhood to youth to adulthood, likewise, the collective humanity has now reached to a point when it can be declared that it is approaching its maturity. Humanity has gone through various evolutionary phases of a life as tribes, as city-states, as nation-state, and today we are approaching what is known as the world citizenship stage. Baha'is believe that the transition phase that humanity is experiencing today, although it is painful and there are lots of challenges and suffering, will eventually bring humanity to that state of understanding and maturity when they will be able to live with each other, albeit with all the diversity, in peace and harmony with each other. And there will be the establishment of the promises that were made in all the holy scriptures of the kingdom of God on earth, as far as the Bible is concerned, the Ram Rajya, as in the Hindu texts. So for Baha'is, this period of transition is actually a phase of evolving to a higher level of understanding and maturity. As we have learned from the different religions, the topic of religious pluralism plays a very important role in our country. In fact, interfaith harmony and consciousness of essential unity of all religions is the very heart of national integration and identity of our country. How is this religious pluralism to be transmitted to the younger generation in a form and manner that will keep the national integration ethos of our country, our civilizational harmony intact, is a major challenge today. And we, who are scholars of our own religious systems, must endeavor to live by what we have all learned from different religions of the golden rule. Every human being has a right to life, right to work, right to live in peace and harmony, right to have a family, right to security, etc. These are now the universal teachings. In our country, which has been an example of religious pluralism, which is multicultural, multilingual, multi-ethnic, we must make sure that the younger generations who are being bombarded by forces of disintegration and the insane materialism realize the fact that religions, after all, have given us our values, religion have given us our ethics, and religion has provided us a spiritual path. So I'd now like to invite our scholars to shed some light to speak of this subject and help us appreciate the fact that India will always be multi-religious, and India must set the positive example of religious pluralism. I invite Professor Goswami to kindly speak from the standpoint of Hinduism.
You see, according to Hinduism, secularism is inbuilt in Hinduism. Everybody, every individual is free to follow his or her own path, because the basis of Hinduism is unity of existence. When I say love thy neighbor as thyself, as the Christians and Judaism we have this saying, why should I love my neighbor as myself? Because according to Hinduism, the self of my neighbor and my own self is one and the same. You see, the very idea of pluralism is inbuilt in Hinduism. When we say each soul is potentially divine, that means there is no distinction due to caste, creed, race or nationality. That is because this term religion does not exist in Hinduism, in the sense that we have an equivalent term dharma, and there is no translation for dharma in any language of the world. The term religion is a very poor translation. That is why you can have your own panth, but religion is oneness, as I said earlier. Therefore, the concept of pluralism, that is inbuilt in Hinduism. Now, what does it lead to? It means I must consider not only human beings as my own self, not only animal kingdom as my own self, but also the mineral kingdom. You see, that gives a very strong, powerful message of environmental protection. When I say the rivers and the mountains and the plants and the animals, they are my own self, my own manifestation. That is the beauty of Hinduism. And it was very scientific in the sense that it was experimentally demonstrated by none other than Professor Jagdish Chandra Bose on 10th May 1901 at Royal Institution, London. He experimentally demonstrated that the mineral kingdom, the vegetable kingdom, and the animal kingdom, although there are millions of species in each kingdom, yet they are one. He performed that experiment, famous experiment, in the presence of a galaxy of scientists. He took 3 samples, one a thin metal sheet representing the mineral kingdom, an animal tissue and a vegetable tissue, and applied an identical stress and strain on all the 3, and then recorded the response of them by an automatic recorder, and presented those recordings before an audience consisting of scientists, and challenged them to figure out which was the response of the mineral, which was the response of the vegetable, which was the response of the animal. They were all identical. Nobody could challenge it. And this is how the way he ended his lecture, it sums up the plurality of Hinduism. He said, and I quote, "I have shown you this evening autographic records of the history of stress and strain on the living and non-living. How similar are the writings, so similar indeed that you cannot tell one apart from the other. Among such phenomena, how can we draw a line of demarcation and say, here the physical ends and there the physiological begins? Such absolute barriers do not exist. It was when I came upon the mute witness of these self-made records and perceived in them one phase of a pervading unity that bears within it all things, the motes that quivers and ripples of light, the teeming life upon our earth, and the radiant suns that shine above us. It was then that I understood, for the first time, a little of that message proclaimed by my ancestors on the banks of the Ganges 30 centuries ago. They who see but one in all the changing manifoldness of this universe, unto them belongs eternal truth, unto none else, unto none else." Unquote. What can be a better example of religious pluralism than this experimental demonstration of the oneness of existence, oneness of the mineral kingdom, the vegetable kingdom, and the animal kingdom? Later on, we had to wait for 80 long years when Helene Aspect and co-workers, they experimentally demonstrated the oneness of existence by verifying the Bell's theorem. And now we have that God particle. So to sum up, I can say that pluralism is the very backbone of Hinduism, of Hindu dharma. Let me put it that way. It is dharma which sustains everything. By definition, dharma is that which sustains everything. That is the raison d'etre of the pluralism of Hinduism.
Thank you very much, Dr. Goswami, for beautifully explaining the Hindu perspective on religious pluralism. In fact, it is built into all our educational programs in the country. I'd now like to request Mr. Syed Shahid Mehdi Sahab to tell us how Islam understands religious pluralism, and it's in fact affirmed in the Holy Quran that all creatures are members of one family of God. So obviously religious pluralism is an important teaching of Islam, and this has also been couched in the UNESCO document on education in the 21st century as one of the pillars, which says learning to live together. So could you kindly help us appreciate and understand how Islam would present this dimension?
I will take up this last statement that you made, quoting UNESCO, learning to live together, which I think has been a part of the initiative perhaps taken by Iran and Spain, you see. Because you see, about 10 years ago, this whole theory of clash of civilizations was becoming very popular, and it was being used for very political purposes by certain powers in the world. In contrast to that, I think President Khatami of Iran at that time and I think Spain also was there. They proffered this whole business of alliance of civilizations, you see. And of course, I mean, this has been going on in the UN, and UNESCO has been in the forefront of. So this is the contemporary. These are contemporary developments. Now, taking off from what my respected colleague has just said, this concept of oneness is there in the mystic thinking of Islamic thinkers, and they call it Wahdatul Wujud, you see, which means there is nothing but God in everything, whether it is animate or inanimate, or you see. And this has been fairly popular with those who are mystically inclined, or Sufis, you see. There have been scholarly consultations also, contestations also on these things, but these thoughts, maybe they are borrowed from the Indian heritage, have permeated lots of other thinking also. But apart from that, you see, there are very, very clear instructions on this, which is La ikrah fi din. There is no compulsion in religion. This is one. The other thing is Lakum dinakum. Your religion is yours and mine is mine. So they talk of coexistence and other things. So these trends are there. Basically all these trends are there in all major religions. It's a question of how these things are distorted. For example, today you will find some sects or some groups who are politically active and who say that unless you follow this narrow and straight path, you are not a Muslim. You see, and if you are not a Muslim, you don't have a right to exist. See. So all religions have such perversities. No religion can be sort of exempted from this. But I think such perversities are against the core of these major religions, etc., etc. So I think above everything, I think when we talk of plurality of religions, thoughts, thinking, etc., etc., apart from the fact that it is embedded in the philosophy, which we have just been sort of enlightened, it's a part of the Constitution of India. You see, basically, you see, this philosophy, or whatever you can say, philosophy or history or living together or living together separately and all these things, they have been enshrined in the Constitution of this country. So, the tradition is backed up by legal force of the Constitution, and that I think is something which is very unique for India, because pluralism not only has existed but has been enshrined in the basic document of this country.
Thank you very much, Shahid Mehdi Saab. I'd like to now invite Father Thomas to tell us how religious pluralism is understood in Christianity, and surely eradication of prejudices is a very important principle to ensure that people are able to appreciate the plural society in which we all live. And Christianity, with its very widespread educational institutions and systems, has contributed immensely, and perhaps Father Thomas, from his own experience, can enlighten us better.
Well, religion is a system of faith, and faith is the core of religion. Pluralism, we know that it is a way of thinking that reality is not only one but many, and it has many aspects or dimensions. Religious pluralism is a philosophy that professes that faith is not only one, but there are many. Faith has diverse dimensions, and all faith traditions together form a complete faith in the same divine and for the same humanity. Basing on this fundamental philosophy or way of thinking, Christianity, before coming to Christianity, any religion or any, since it has a lot of emotional, experiential content, in the younger days one thinks of one's own religious tradition only. It is natural. As one grows in one's religious experience, one is bound to become an adult, bound to become a mature in one's religious experience and perspective, by which one is bound to open up to other religious traditions and faiths. In the Christianity, in the last 60s of the last century, was the Second Worldwide Vatican Council opened a new wave of interfaith dialogue based on this pluralistic understanding of faiths. There is not only the faith which I belong to, there are also other faiths, and there are spiritual and human values, universal values present in all these, and one has to learn from those values, enrich one's own faith, and thus enrich other faiths with one's own as well. India is a unique country where immense dimensions of diversity is there, and no other country can be compared to this great land. Here, based on the Hindu wide perspective of life, all the religious traditions in India has immense scope for broadening one's own faith traditions and understanding one's own faith and other faiths on a larger platform. Christian tradition, for example, there is no particular language for the Christian tradition. All the languages of the humanity are accepted by the Christian tradition. There is no divine language as such, and all the languages are accepted wherever people live and work. All those languages and dialects are accepted as their own languages. They learn to speak their language, live, and thus imbibe the spirit of that the cultural genius present in that language. Coming to the religious educational area, about 50 Christian universities and colleges are there in the country, where from the last 60s of the last century, it is mandatory to study all religions, Hinduism, Jainism, Buddhism, Baha'i, Judaism, all traditions are compulsorily in a mandatory manner, and thus develop theses on a comparative nature. There are hundreds of scholars on Hinduism, Islam, and diverse religious traditions. So that point of view, in the educational sector of the future leaders of the community, there is a lot of stress for broadening one's faith to a circle of all faiths. And also coming to the another aspect, the culture. There is no single Christian culture in this country. In the Christian culture in this country is in very many matters different from the Christian cultures existing in other parts of the world. And there is no one Christian culture in this Christian country. That the pluralistic spirit is imbibed by the Christian community, and a Christian culture in Kerala and in Manipur and in Jammu Kashmir are different in many aspects. That point of view, the religious pluralism within the Christian community is very much in line with the pluralistic spirit of this country. And one more thing to add is that in line with the new wave of interreligious dialogue and learning, imbibing the values of all religious traditions, there is an added stress on learning the scriptures of others, learning the religious and universal spiritual values of other religious traditions, and thus to make a friendship with the people of all religious communities without discrimination, and thus together make a family of God and make a humanity and a country that is better to live in. And this becomes the core focus of the Christianity of the 20th century, and especially for the 21st century and the years ahead.
Thank you very much, Father Thomas. I'd like to request Rabbi Malekar how the Jews who have been in India for several centuries addressed the issue of religious pluralism.
At the outset, I would like to say that Jews have been living in India for the last 2000 years, and India is one of the countries where Jews have never faced anti-Semitism and persecution. And therefore, we always say that Janani Janma Bhumischa Swargadapi Gariyasi, the mother who has given you the birth and country where you were born are greater than the heaven. Therefore, we always say that we are Indians first and Jews second. Because we say Vasudeva Kutumbakam, Atiti Devo Bhava. And India is a multi-religious country, the republic of religions, where there are more than 5 religions which have come from the foreign lands, but they have been coexisting in India without coming into conflict with each other. So India is a great nation, and therefore I always say that in order to achieve national integration, we must say with one voice that we are Indians first. About the concept of religion in Judaism, according to Judaism, religion is thinking, religion is awakening, religion purifies your mind, religion promotes righteousness, religion is a straight path to improve your physical, material as well as the spiritual life. And it is very important to know that unless and until we have the value-based education, moral education, ethics education, your religion is not complete. So according to Judaism, that you must be slow in anger, compassionate, merciful, and serve the humanity. And serve the humanity means to serve the downtrodden societies, vulnerable sections of the society. That is the core of Judaism.
Dr. Amrit Kaur, the Sikh community in India has been the second largest minority in the country as per the current census data, and its contribution has been immense. How would you enlighten us about the contribution of Sikhism to understanding religious pluralism?
In this context, I like to make certain observations. I'll start with Guru Granth Sahib, which enshrines the Bani of not only Sikh Gurus but also that of Bhagats and Charans also. And in this Vani, as the unity of mankind has been proclaimed, I would like to allude to the fact that from the days of Guru Nanak, it has also been practiced. Guru Nanak was accompanied by Mardana. He visited all important religious places and had discussions with everyone. By being Sikh does not mean that there is no way to live with others. The very foundation of Gurdwaras, where devotees meet to allude to the oneness of God, is meant for everyone. Everybody can enter without discrimination, and the whole concept of langar is also based on the concept of seva, serving others and fulfilling their, one would say, physical needs, and then alluding the name of God. We have so many instances from past also when for humanities not only Sikh Gurus but Sikhs also worked. Guru Nanak founded Kartarpur, where all could live. You have the foundation of Amritsar, Anandpur Sahib for that matter. Wells were also dug up, and people in distress have always been served. In fact, when 10th Guru, Guru Gobind Singh, fought for religious freedom and religious consciousness, then he was helped by all devoted, I would say, human beings. And when the battle of Anandpur Sahib was being fought, then Bhai Kanhaiya served all wounded. So that tradition has been continuing. And on personal front, I would like to emphasize that University of Delhi has started a unique concept of college on wheels, and this college on wheels takes nearly 1000 students, not only from Delhi University but also from outside, and the area is selected where all important places which in normal you can say or outwardly nomenclature may be called religious places per se, but students are encouraged to visit them, observe practices and also to understand it. So the very practice of religious pluralism at civil level is possible when we understand each other, we understand each other practices, and we go in for the whole concept of acceptance. Only then caring and sharing is possible.
Thank you very much, Professor Amrit Kaur. I'd like to briefly mention about the Baha'i community, which has been in existence from its very inception 170 years ago, and appreciating religious pluralism is built into its principle of accepting diversity. And a Baha'i child is taught that just as in a garden you have diverse flowers of different colors, shades, fragrances, likewise humanity is intrinsically diverse, and we must be able to appreciate the otherness. So the child grows up free from prejudice. So this diversity, understanding of diversity, helps us to also understand that the divine or God has sent his teachings at different points of time in history, and these were sent according to the needs and requirements of the people of that particular time. So today, when we live in a world community, we should accept the diversity of religions, the diversity of cultures, diversity of languages, and understand it as the way the example I had given about the garden. And an even more powerful example would be the human body, which has got billions and billions of cells, and each cell of each organ contributes uniquely to the well-being of the entire body. So briefly, I feel that religious pluralism is something we need to accept in a positive way and ensure that no prejudices or ignorance become a cause for conflict and division. Distinguished friends, welcome to the third round of our discussion on religious pluralism. Our focus in this session will be largely the impact of globalization on religious systems and how we can help teachers who come to the Center for Cultural Resources and Training and the younger generation to appreciate the fact that although materialism has reached its apex, yet all the value systems that we have imbibed as human beings, their source are the religious scriptures and the teachings of the founders of the world's great religions. And one can easily notice that humankind is facing tremendous challenges, especially after the World War II, when globalization became a phenomenon that nobody could escape from. So today, when we have globalization as not only a buzzword, but as the very sine qua non of our existence, how can we appreciate and understand religion, which is an extraordinary power in itself, and help peoples everywhere to stay united, to face the forces of disintegration and materialism, and help humanity to manifest those qualities of compassion, morality, kindness, honesty, truthfulness, which have all come to us from our deepest belief in the religious systems that we profess. So I'd like to invite Dr. Goswami to share his perspective of how Hinduism addresses the impact of globalization in our country.
You see, if you enter the Indian Parliament, at the entrance you will find this written, Ayam nijah paroveti ganana laghuchetasam udar charitanam tu vasudhaiva kutumbakam. This is mine, this is yours. This sort of a thinking belongs to mean type of thinking. For large-hearted people, the whole globe, the whole earth is one family. So this concept of globalization is as old as Hinduism itself. We have these concepts right from the Rig Veda. In the famous saying of sage Dirghtamas, he says, Ekam sadvipra bahudha vadanti. It is one which appears as many, and people call it by various names, but essentially it is one. And this sentiment is repeatedly observed in not only in the Vedic literature, the whole Vedic corpus. For example, in the Upanishad, we have Isha Vasyamidam Sarvam Yat Kincha Jagatyam Jagat. In the whole world, not only on this planet Earth, but in the whole cosmos. Whatever you see around you is nothing but a divine manifestation. It is not a creation, it is a manifestation of the divinity. So, this is the concept of globalization. The seeds of globalization are there in not only in the Vedic literature, but also in the Bhagavad Gita. You have these concepts in the Bhagavad Gita, Vasudeva Sarvamiti. All this is nothing but he himself manifesting as many. So, the entire Indian, these scriptures, which are of course considered as inferior knowledge by the Upanishads, we might come to it later, but the stress is on the fusion of this knowledge. This is very essential. The scriptures are very essential, but the most essential is the superior most knowledge is the realization of this information, Jnana Yoga as we call it. That is the concept of globalization in Hinduism.
Islam, we live in a world where about 1/3 of the population profess Islam, and surely they must have also been impacted by the forces of globalization. Let's hear from Sayyid Shahid Mehdi Saab what he has to offer as a Muslim in addressing the issues of globalization.
You see, globalization in a very specific in which it is used may be a recent concept, but globalization in the sense of certain culture and certain sort of religion crossing the boundaries of countries is not such a new phenomenon, particularly with respect to Islam, because even now you can see that this is one religion which is spread from traditionally North Africa to China. Incidentally, you must have heard the name of Ibn Battuta. You see, the great traveler who came to India also and stayed here for quite some years. Now he starts from Tangiers, which is on the coast of Atlantic, and goes up to China and feels that he is all the time in a world which is familiar to him. So in that sense, I think this is a religion which has crossed the ethnic and cultural boundaries and racial boundaries, etc., etc. But you are asking what is the impact of globalization as we know it now. Now you see, I think the effect of globalization mostly is on material conditions. At the same time, it also makes for very quick transmission of knowledge and values, etc., etc. Now it is for us to see that the negative impacts of globalization, which also can mean exploitation by one people, exploitation of the other people, etc., are minimized, and the opportunities that globalization presents are exploited in a positive way. Now in this connection, I think we should not confine ourselves so far as the values, if you want to nurture those values, to religions in the established sense of the word. But I think we should go to, for example, other documents. Let us take the UN Charter or the Charter of Human Rights. Now this is something which has been, around which there has been a consensus of all the countries in the world. So why not there should be consensus for spreading the values which are embedded in these recent consensuses which have been arrived at, not respecting the national boundaries across culture, etc. And I think in this respect, as I mentioned earlier, the dialogue of civilizations which has been started and which I am afraid is not getting adequate attention from the UN Secretariat should be promoted, especially by a country like India, which has a multicultural and multi-religious society.
Thank you, sir. Father Thomas, the Western society has often been blamed for the many ills of globalization because of its entrenched pattern and philosophical construct of capitalism, relativism, consumerism, materialism, etc. Now, how does a Christian address these issues?
The new wave of globalization is so thoroughgoing that no one individual or community or nation can remain untouched on the shore. One has to be part of the process. So with regard to this process, when we have this globalization as a process, and how when we consider religious pluralism in terms of this, two things that come to my mind are, one, there are two trends in different nations, the way nations construct and conduct themselves. One is a religion-based way of making a nation and conducting themselves, which is not an ideal thing, because nation is a secular concept, and these nations today are on the whole less, and they also are slowly opening up to a larger mindset. The second tendency in this we see is more and more nations are becoming multi-religious in the world, and this is a positive trend. And nation is a secular concept, multidimensional, multilingual, multicultural, multi-religious, multi-traditional. That point of view, globalization wave has to foster this multi-religious construct and conducting in the different countries, and that will be on the whole a positive trend of globalization. The second aspect that comes to my mind in terms of religious pluralism and globalization, all religions today have to become more and more globalized, in the sense not only by way of migration from one country to the another, but also becoming more global in perspective, broadening one's perspective, way of seeing one's own faith and one's own God and one's own the humanity, etc., in a larger way, where even the particular religious tradition is only in one country, also a larger perspective is today called for, especially in the globalized world today, to have a meaningful living. And in this process, the religions have to contribute by playing its responsibility of making religions more broad-based, involved in imbibing the spirit of universal spiritual values that is present in all religious traditions, different countries. Christian tradition in particular, and majority of the Christian majority countries and even Christian minority countries today are opening up to other religious faiths, other cultures, other languages, and this is a positive trend which I am seeing, globalization on a larger perspective, and the role of religions in promoting a positive dimension of globalization.
Thank you, Father Thomas. Rabbi Malekar, if globalization is understood to mean a post-World War II phenomenon, then the emergence of the State of Israel, which was established in 1948, is coterminous, and the Jewish people who experienced harrowing times during the Holocaust must have perhaps a very different kind of perspective on globalization itself. And how can the Jewish community's perspective help our teachers to understand the forces of globalization?
In this regard, I would like to draw your kind attention to the preamble of the Constitution of India, that India is a democratic, sovereign and secular country, and therefore this globalization has gained a very great importance as far as India is concerned. I recollect the words of Swami Vivekananda ji, you may be born in any religion but you cannot die in it, and therefore if you are born in a particular religion, you follow that religion but respect other religions. What is our tendency? We criticize, trying to prove that my religion is superior to others, and therefore we try to pinpoint the commonalities, similarities existing in all the religions, and don't ignore the differences, you respect those differences also. And therefore, I always say that the human rights of the minority communities in India are to be respected. It's very important in India because we neglect. And secondly, we always think of the, being an Indian, we have the constitutional rights, fundamental rights, freedom of speech, freedom of equality, freedom of religion, profess religion, freedom to live life with dignity, Article 21, free education. But we never thought of why to think of free of. Why not free from disease, free from poverty, free from corruption, free from illiteracy, free from unemployment. That is very important. When you think that the entire world is one village, so my view is that since we are all one global, and therefore respect other religions, try to find out the commonalities, read holy scriptures of all the religions, like it is said in Srimad Bhagavatam, like honeybee collecting honey from different flowers. Similarly, why not we take essence, goodness existing in all our religions, and teach our youngsters. Now, globalization we talk about, Dr. Merchant, we never thought of this HIV/AIDS, drug addict. There are so many persons dying in India. If you take cigarette smoking in India, every day 14,000 people die, and out of which 30% are children below the age group of 8 to 14. So you must concentrate. And as far as India is concerned, having worked with the Human Rights Commission, there are so many human rights violations. There is a gender discrimination, sexual harassment, dowry death, so child labor, child marriage. So we must pay our attention, we think. And secondly, in my opinion, of course we have the interfaith dialogue. Why interfaith dialogue? Why not interfaith? Within our own community, there is fanatism. So in our own community, we must have interfaith dialogue, see that there is a harmony within our own group. Then only we will be able to have the harmony all over the world. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Amrit Kaur, the spread of Sikhism around the world is relatively a recent phenomenon, and I believe that globalization, although it has helped to spread the spiritual values of your religious system, yet when it comes to the younger generation, there is still, I think, many challenges that you have facing. Could you please tell us how the Sikh community is addressing this aspect of globalization?
Dr. Merchant, your question is really pertinent to the very well-being of not only Sikh community but society at large. I will start by saying that we live in global world where local is global, and ICT has brought us closer than ever before. As far as Sikhs are concerned, or you can say the follower of Sikhism has been a part of diasporic community for a very, very long time, from late 19th century onward. It is said that we are living now in almost 150 countries of the world. There are two kinds of important issues involved with the very practice of religious plurality. One, the ills that are there from within, and one, the problem confronting from outside. What is happening and what has been my observation over the period of time is that somehow the younger generation and the older one, to some extent, is getting confused with what has been accepted as so-called symbolic identification of Sikhism. Without understanding the basis of tenet, you can say Sikhism as enshrined in 5 Ks, there is a lot of confusion, and the muck is much created by the virtual world, and we are having another discursive space where arguments and counter arguments going up to scurrilous writings are going on. So that needs to be taken care of. We must first of all understand the very basis of Sikhism and every religion at a general level, so that because they are not only to be understood but also practiced. This is what every faith or every religion has been talking about, so that must be taken into account. Second issue is much more complicated because we do not live in a kind of cosmos that God created. This cosmos has, and you can say world has been divided into many boundaries which are being dictated by nation states. So the relationship of civil society from within and relationship of civil society with this state is an issue which concerns all of us. What happens when you feel that what is innate to your very existence is abhorred by the state? What happens when you are killed in the name of religion? What happens when the various segments of civil society are traumatized and you are being forced to live in isolation? I am very happy to say that as far as India is concerned, despite conflict, contestation, you can say mudslinging and all kinds of assumptions, society has always struggled and had progressed well. The relationship of state has been negotiated. There have been people who have come forward to point out what has gone wrong in the past and that should be preempted. But we need to be more vigilant on this account, and one has to make it sure that we must live by humanitarian values. The rights of citizens must be respected, and that right starts from a state and goes up to global citizenship.
Thank you very much. I might add that from the perspective of the Baha'i faith, globalization, although today much of the experience has been rather the economic and political alignments of the nations, yet for the Baha'i, globalization will have its positive benefits when people begin to consider themselves as citizens of the world. And it is very urgent that we should look upon this planet as a common homeland, because the environmental and ecological crises, the spread of international terrorism, and the rampant and relentless impact of the armaments that are spreading all over the globe are having very adverse impacts. So Baha'is feel that when religious values are brought in a proper dimension into the process of globalization, then there will be a big shift, and with that spiritual awakening, we as one people and one planet will be able to address most of the challenges facing our planet, and using the technology for positive purposes, we'll be able to overcome them and really build a peaceful and harmonious world. In brief, I believe that each of us who have contributed our religious perspective on the impact of globalization have done well to stress upon how important religions are in realigning or reshaping and redirecting the forces of globalization in a manner that it will be for the larger good of the people of the world. And I'd like to address two other challenges that are very closely related. One is the younger generation. I mean, this is the generation when we have the teenagers who, with their high-tech gizmos and gadgets and all kinds of communication technology facilities, are becoming prey to the forces of disintegration much more easily than to the family values which each of the religious communities have provided. And I feel that parents, teachers have a very important responsibility in being able to communicate with the younger generation in a manner that they see the forces of globalization as something positive. And the more urgently we address this, the sooner perhaps we'll be able to save the younger generation from going downhill as a result of the forces of consumerism and materialism. May I invite again all of you distinguished friends to kindly share a little bit from your religious perspective how you would like to address this issue. And I'd like to begin with Dr. Goswami. How a young Hindu, 14, 15 years old, can face the world today?
In Hinduism, we have, as I said earlier, this concept of oneness, and each Hindu child is taught in his home to pray, Sarve bhavantu sukhina, sarve santu niramaya, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschit dukkha bhag bhavet. Let all be happy, let all be healthy, sarve bhavantu sukhina, and then let there be well-being of everybody. So now, these days, students, our younger generation is taught that your class fellow who is sitting by your side on the bench is not your friend, he is your competitor. So that is a tragedy. So we have this prayer, we teach in our homes, and we quote from the our scriptures, especially the Bhagavad Gita, and we tell our younger students that the idea of Lok Sangraha that we have in the Bhagavad Gita, so widely acclaimed and explained, nicely explained in the Bhagavad Gita, that we have to work for the welfare of all. Bahujan Hitaya, Bahujan Sukhaya. Don't concentrate on your own self, your own interest, your own. If you are share with everybody, sharing, that is one of the major concepts of Hinduism. Let me share it with my neighbor who is not a different person from myself. And this identity of the all existence is best explained in one of the sayings of Swami Vivekananda. He said, the day you are prepared to lay down your life for the sake of a worm in the drain, that will be the day of your liberation. See the idea of renunciation, not caring for your own life. You are prepared to lay down your life for the sake of a worm in the drain. That is the idea of the extreme renunciation. So renunciation, tena tyaktena bhunjitha. The Upanishad repeatedly talks of this renunciation, tyag, renounce, and renounce what? What you have gained through honest means. So that is one of the foundations of the Bhagavad Gita and the Upanishads and the Vedic literature that we can inspire our younger generation to follow and imbibe.
Sayyid Shahid Mehdi Sahab, when we talk about the globalization and the younger generation population in Islam, it is rather strange and sad to see and hear or read in the papers and the media that young people in the Islamic community are often being looked upon negatively, especially in the post 9/11 scenario. And this is something we need to prevent as quickly as possible, because if a negative legacy develops, then every young person of another religion may think that a Muslim young person perhaps he is being brainwashed. So sir, I feel that your perspective and your enlightenment is very crucial to our shaping the minds of the young population in the Islamic world.
See, the world is dominated by media, and particularly media from the Western world, and particularly from the dominant Western power, that is United States of America. Now, there is a very strange phenomenon we find, that these political considerations cross the boundaries of all ethical or principled stands. Some of these great powers are great allies of certain countries which cannot be counted as promoting the progressive aspects of this universal religion. So I think we will have to make a distinction between the politics and the other values which are there, because you cannot and 9/11, you see, basically what is 9/11? Something happened from most of the people who were involved came from the country which is most friendly to the country in which this happened, you see. And in spite of the fact that there was a total blanket, every flight was prohibited, people from the same country, from the same family, who were the president's friends, they were flown out. So let's not mix up the power game with the politics of this kind of thing. So that is one thing. Now, there is no point only in keeping blaming others for all these things. So therefore, I think what we can do is that the emphasis should be on the positive values of humanitarian culture and all these things, and of that you will find plenty. You see, in particularly the teachings of the Sufis. Rumi is supposed to be revived and one of the most popular poets now in USA. Now here he says, Adamiyat ehtarame admi, ba khabar shaw az maqame admi. What is humanity? Humanity is respecting the human beings, and therefore you should be aware of the position of the man, humanity, in the scheme of things. Similarly, you will find that lots of Sufi teachings in the Indian Sufi tradition are very compatible with the aims of universal brotherhood, non-violence, being generous to others, etc., etc. So what I feel is we will have to make a distinction between the what to talk of one religion. I mean, you will find fanatics in all religions, without exception. I am not going to name names. You see, even in the best Western tradition, you will find fanatics. You see. So, but if we keep on harping on these trends, which are found in all religions, you see, irrespective, all the people who are sitting here, you see. I don't know about the Baha'is, but at least all of us can say that there is a lunatic fringe in all these religions which is doing all this. So the main issue is how to respond to them, and you can respond to them by finding the better examples from your own tradition, and by promoting the universal values to which our friend Professor Goswami has pointed out, and saying some kind of a confluence of these values in all great religions.
Thank you very much, Sayyid Mahdi Sahib. I'd now like to ask Father Thomas that the Christian ethics and the spirit of ecumenism and interreligious dialogue has in fact paralleled the spread of globalization. How can the great contribution that Christianity has made to the spiritual values in religious systems once again be recast in a manner that will appeal to the younger generation? Sir, what are your comments on this?
As I reflect on the younger generation in terms of religion, and especially Christianity, I have two things that come to my mind now. The first thing is this, with a specific focus on our country, India. Maybe irrespective of all religious communities, one unfortunate phenomenon that we see is the senior generation is losing the control over the younger generation significantly. There may be slight difference in different communities, but all the same this phenomenon is seen all over. One reason which is prominent with regard to this phenomenon is that the young generation are especially looking for good models, role models. They look into the political sector, they find one or two here and there. They find scandalous models. Even in the religious sector, educational sector, all sectors, they find there is a big gap between the theory and the practice. And unfortunately, the senior generation who may speak a lot of ideals, they are losing control or influence or inspiration over the younger generation. This is a major point that is to be addressed. The Christian community, a way of trying to address this, as traditionally also, there is a religious education included in every week, that for Christian students there is maybe once a week in the schools, a religious instruction on Christian values is stressed also in comparison to other religious values. Also, especially Sunday, there is a system of all Christian families going to the church for prayer together, young and old, children included. And when they go together with the senior generation, they imbibe certain values by themselves. And after the church prayer, they have, the younger generation has Sunday class on religious values. And this more or less a major effort to address the problem of losing control, losing influence on the younger generation by the senior generation. And perhaps I think the second point that comes to my mind, the problem of the young is they are losing a sense of direction in great numbers, irrespective of their belonging to any community. Many of them are confused according to the modern values that from the West or from wherever it comes, together with the negative dimension of globalization. They are attracted to certain non-values and they lose their control. Many of them go off the track, they get into problems and struggle, etc. So they are getting confused. And what is needed to address, instead of blaming anyone for that, the religious sector has to come up with more sense of responsibility, that rather than inculcating one's own religion, strengthening one's own religious system as such, but to present before them maybe instead of sweet traditional rituals, etc., which they are less attracted to, maybe more religious values, spiritual values, secular values, ethics, and that also of all religious traditions, so that they may be more attracted to values and ethics in a country, especially where sense of ethics is very weak. And this is, I think, the Christian community, there is a lot of effort and in this line, and together with all religious communities, I think this is what we should do towards the younger generation to improve the situation towards for the better.
Thank you, Father Thomas. Rabbi Malekar, I'd like to know what examples the Jewish community can offer. How does the Jewish community ensure that the young generation stays firm on its spiritual values and at the same time ensure that globalization has a salutary and beneficial impact?
As you know, during the Second World War, more than 6 million Jews have been killed during the Nazis' time. And what we learn from this, that we must have the tolerance. Like a tree, if you pelt a stone at a tree, you get in return fruits. So that you must be tolerant, have the humility. Like a cloud, when cloud is filled with water, it bows down to the earth. So that tolerance, and who is mighty? He who controls his anger and passion. Who is rich? Who is content with what God has given to him? Who is respected? A person who respects his fellow men. And who is wise? He who learns from everyone, even from the child. And to the world, Judaism has given a great gift, that is 10 commandments. If you see the arrangement of 10 commandments, 5 commandments each have been written on a separate. The first 5 commandments, your duties, obligations towards God. Next 5 commandments, your duties, obligations toward your fellow men. Thou shalt not covet, thou shalt not stand false witness, thou shalt not commit adultery. So these are the comments. But the 5th commandment in the Old Testament, this 10 commandments, thou shalt honor thy father and mother. So someone asked me, how you are, by respecting and honoring your parents, you are fulfilling the obligations towards God. The answer given in Torah, that your parents are partners with Almighty in creating you. But unfortunately, not only in India, everywhere in the world, the parents, especially elderly persons, are being neglected by their own children, and they consider themselves as their burden upon them. As far as ethics and moral duties are concerned, I think we parents, even the my great spiritual leaders sitting with me, they will agree that we fail in our duties. We don't pay even the teachers in the schools what our children are doing. Whether they are sitting next to the idiot box, the media, the computer, what they are watching, we don't have time for them. So I think parents are also responsible. And what is the misconception in the minds of the children, that they think that religion is not being used, religion is being abused and misused in emergency. That misconception from their mind, we have to remove from there. And the most important thing, that they lack moral and ethics education. So value-based education is very, very important, not only for the Jewish child, but for all the children, so that they live their life very happily, peacefully, and in harmony.
Thank you, Professor Amrit Kaur ji. The Sikh community is known for its dynamism and its cohesiveness, and as a religion it has remained one. But let me ask you, how does the young Sikh today fulfill his or her pledge and commitment to the teachings of the Sikh gurus?
I will start by saying that religious identity is not communal identity. This is the basic truth which should be disseminated among all human beings and students in particular, because there is close relationship between family, community and society. Educational institutions are located within. So within classroom situation, if multiple religious identities are together and they accept each other and celebrate what one would like to call as, let's say, religious festival celebration, then we are going towards the process of integration and acceptance. It is very important. Young generation among Sikhs is also, as is happening everywhere, has been swept by globalization. Material wealth is around. Young generation is also getting swayed by ICT, where lot of misinformation is passed as knowledge on Sikhism. It has really created many problems. Many profess and even are well versed in Sikh scripture, but they do not practice it. Why they don't practice it? It's the simple reason that from within their families there is a kind of a material greed, and the actual tenets of Sikhism, wherein truth and truthful living is considered more important, is not being practiced. So what we need, that we must have corrective from within, and when it comes from within, then within the classroom situation, which is moving out of, let's say, your own personal moorings and from families, then whatever students are learning, that should be channelized by the teacher if there is need, or otherwise students should be encouraged to share their views and news about various religions with each other, and out of that a healthy dialogue, or rather multilogue, must emerge, so that they can live together and enjoy each other difference. So we do not merely need the ideology of tolerance, but acceptance should be the norm.
Thank you very much. From the Baha'i perspective, I think what is important is that each human being has to be made to understand that one is born as a trust into this world, and as trustees of this planet, each one of us has our duties and responsibilities clearly spelled out towards ourselves, towards our family, towards the society and towards the world at large. If we do not have this kind of a reorientation in our thought process, where we look upon the world as one family, and this is again clearly stressed in almost all the religions, only thing that the horizons have expanded, and today it is a reality before us. In the past, when Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam was talked about, we didn't even know how this world looked like. Or when Holy Prophet Muhammad told his people that if you have to search for knowledge, even if you have to travel to China, go as far as there, they still did not appreciate. So from the perspective of the Baha'i faith, as I was adding and trying to come to a conclusion, this discourse and dialogue that we have had on understanding religious pluralism, the impact of religious teachings upon the young people, the responsibility of the educators and teachers, the aspect of the current forces of globalization, largely overswept by materialism and consumerism, has to be addressed firmly by a renaissance of the spiritual values. And we will have to drop the historical baggage, and we will have to take the positive, the plus side of every religious teaching and recast them in a manner that will be suited to the emerging trends of the globe. Because if we don't do it, then particularly from the ecological and the environmental dimensions, the world is going to face enormous catastrophes and calamities. So we have to get our acts together, and this can only begin in the classroom, in the family, in the homes, in smaller groups where people are able to discuss these issues threadbare and ensure that the spiritual values are the foundations for a new world community that needs to be established. So the world is moving towards its destiny. All of the religious systems have contributed enormously to the advancement of civilization as we know it, and what we need to do is to balance the material side of civilization, which has advanced very rapidly, with the spiritual dimensions of civilization, because civilization is composed of both these aspects, and when they are harmonized and they are properly balanced, then there will be only light upon light, and there will be welfare and peace for all. On behalf of the Center for Cultural Resources and Training, distinguished friends, I'd like to thank you from the bottom of my heart. Dr. S.C. Goswami, Sayyid Shahid Mehdi Sahab, Father M.D. Thomas, Rabbi Ezekiel Malikar, Dr. Amrit Kaur Basraji, for having come to the studio and done this wonderful discussion on religious pluralism, and contributed so much to our understanding and enlightenment and learning about the importance of religious pluralism, and appreciating the tremendous contribution that religions or dharma, and whatever name you may use, have contributed to the enrichment and the benefit of the society at large. And I'm indeed grateful to the CCRT and its director, Mr. Girish Joshi, for having invited us and given us this opportunity to share our understanding and knowledge about different religions in India and the world at large. Thank you very much.